If you want to speak, please sign up with Jennifer. We welcome everybody. Y'all behave back there. I can't see y'all. City of Smithfield Special Call Council Meeting and Budget Workshop, May 22nd, 2024. Notice is hereby given pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Vernon's Annotated Civil Statute, Article 625217, that the City of Smithfield will conduct a special called council meeting and budget workshop on May 22nd, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. in the council chambers of City Hall, 317 Main Street, Smithfield, Texas. I'll call this to order. First item on the agenda, presentation from City Manager on Mayor, City Council, and City Manager roles, responsibilities. Robert Tamble.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and citizens. Thanks for coming out. I want to congratulate those folks who were reelected or elected as candidates. Appreciate your service. I have several things to review this evening. If you don't mind a less formal presentation, I can go up there, but it'll make Councilmember Etheridge have to turn his stretch and turn. Is it okay to sit here to do this presentation? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so tonight I would like to cover for the newbies and maybe a refresher for the old guard, council roles and responsibilities. We'll cover some recent accomplishments, review future plans and projects. I want to give you a status of the FY 23-24 budget. We'll also review the 2023 tax note, give you an update of where we are on spending for the note. We're going to discuss the enterprise resource planning ERP system for possible implementation at a later date. And then we'll talk about FY 24-25, give you a preliminary budget overview, what's the process and timeline. We'll cover the Bastrop County Appraisal District preliminary property values, and then just give you a snapshot of what the preliminary or proposed spending for FY 24-25 looks like. At the end of this, citizen comments, at the end of the presentation, citizens are free to comment, and I think some are signing up now, which is good. Council, if you have, or Mayor, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to stop me and we can address those at that time. Any questions from anyone? Good. Okay. Roles and responsibilities, Mayor, City Council, and City Manager. The Mayor is the political figurehead of the municipality and expected to make appearances at community events, undertake ceremonial functions, maintain a presence at City Hall, be the liaison with local, state, and federal elected officials, and create follow-through with political mandates. The Mayor is also responsible for running council meetings, special meetings, and workshops. The City Manager's role and responsibility, well, basically, the City Manager manages the daily operations and personnel, include staffing, hiring, and firing. City Manager recommends strategic directions to the Mayor and or City Council. Also responsible for developing a balanced budget, although there are some municipalities who adopt a deficit budget. I would never do that to y'all for consideration. I partner with other governmental agencies like Bastrop County OEM, TDM, agencies at the state and or federal level. I also ensure that policies, programs, and the directions of the council are implemented. I also need to, the City Manager responsible for informing council members on the operation and affairs of the municipality. And my favorite, manage citizen complaints, concerns, and requests for information. Any questions about the City Manager roles and responsibility? The Mayor Pro Tem. The Mayor Pro Tem is selected by the majority of the council by a majority vote. They're responsible for performing the mayor's duties when in the absence of the mayor. The current Mayor Pro Tem is Councilmember Jimmy Jenkins. City Council members, what are y'all here for? Well, you're responsible for identifying the needs of local residents. You're the conduit of communication to and from the citizenry. You need to help communicate programs and plans to the community. You're responsible for adopting a budget, setting the tax rate, fee schedules, and making policy. I Also, you're responsible for providing feedback to the city manager regarding accomplishments, issues, and/or future plans. It would help if you are consistent. You've been pretty good at responding to the city secretary or my requests for information to confirming your attendance at meetings and/or events. And another important factor, your role and responsibility is to represent the city at community functions, ribbon cuttings, ceremonies, fundraisers, so forth and such. Questions about the roles and responsibilities? Do you duly accept those as we go forward? Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Some other things I wanted to cover, just as a refresher and those for information for those who might not know. There are times when citizens and their organizations request information from the city. Most of that is we're able to provide, and it's through open records requests. You can do that by phone, by email, or on our website. Typically, it takes 10 days to respond to open records requests, and they include, but are not limited to, emails, texts, contracts, reports, and even social media posts. Sometimes we do have to redact information, and that's why it takes the 10 days, but by law, we have 10 days to respond unless there's an AG, Attorney General opinion requested. Sometimes, because of the nature of the request, we do have to ask information from the Attorney General to see what needs or can be provided. Sometimes there's a fee, depending upon the amount or volume of the request. We've had some requests that were 1,200 pages. It takes a lot of time to do that. And if you're filing an open records request as a citizen, it really helps to be very specific. The more specific you are, the sooner you're going to get the information and the less it's going to eventually cost you. That 1,200 page open record request was about $600 and hundreds of hours of staff time. Let's talk about the agenda. How do things get on the agenda? How does a bill become a law? How many of y'all remember that cartoon back in the 70s, 80s? Y'all are a tough crowd, but here we go. City Council meets on the second Monday of each month. And in order for an item to appear on the agenda, you have to get it to the city secretary by noon the Wednesday prior to the council meeting. An agenda qualifies if any one or combination of the following two members happen. That's council member, a council member, city manager, mayor, council member. It takes two. Okay. The agenda is posted 72 hours in advance by law. So that's typically why you'll see the final agenda posted by 5 o'clock the Friday before the Monday meeting. Per council request about a year and a half ago, we started publishing a preliminary agenda by 3 or at least 5 p.m. on Wednesday, which I think has helped people get a heads up of what is coming down the pike. Yes? Good. Walking quorum. A walking quorum happens when 3 or more members of the governmental body meet, call, text, or email to discuss city business. That's tough on the council because when you're new, you want to ask advice. You just have to be very careful when you're asking for that advice and never poll or confer how you're going to vote on an item. Doing so is a violation of the Texas Open Meetings Act, which is punishable by $500 fine per occurrence and up to 6 months in jail. So it's taken seriously amongst the governmental entity. There are times when the council needs to meet in executive session, but there's criteria for meeting in an executive session. There are the following. Whenever we're talking about leasing or purchasing property, when we consult with an attorney for litigation or resolution of an issue that involves the city, personnel matters, hiring, firing, performance management and review, economic development, and then certain security and or cybersecurity issues. Typically, we'll go into an executive session, and the council has the right to do so at any time during a meeting. You just have to communicate what decisions, if any, were made in the closed session when you come back out in the open session. Questions? Citizen comments. Members of the community do have the right to address the council during an open meeting on any item that is on the agenda. We do ask that if you want to address the council, that you sign up in advance. When you do get to the podium, please state your name, your address, and understand that you have 3 minutes to address the council, so use your time efficiently. In general, it's not an opportunity to engage or interact, interrogate, or go back and forth. State what you want to state, and the council will take that under consideration. You'll have 3 minutes to do so. If indeed you run out of time, and that's happened before, and the presenter or the citizen would like to ask for additional time, the mayor can grant that. If there are no objections of any member of the council, if there is an objection, then it takes a vote to extend time. Questions? Good. We added about 6 months ago, I think, an opportunity for members of the community, not just the citizens, but anyone in the county, the state, that would like to address the city council for something that's not on the agenda. Well, the same criteria applies. You need to sign up before the meeting, state your name, and speak your 3 minutes. I will say that since it's not on the agenda, in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the council cannot take action specifically on an item that is not on the agenda. So typically what will happen, a person will get up and the council can respond with factual information, statements of existing policy, or state that the item will go on a future agenda. Questions? Good. Citizen engagement and communication. You know, there's a lot of talk now, the buzzwords transparency, and we do a lot to try to make sure citizens are informed, educated, and involved. These are all the methods of communication that we utilize. And even I found out one today that I wasn't aware of. On our new city website, there's a button that says notify me. So any citizen can sign up for that service. You can be notified on council agendas. You can be notified without other items. Yeah, bid packets, calendar. It's in the lower right-hand corner. I can't show it right now because it'll take us off of the YouTube, but I thought that was a very nice feature of our new website that I just found out about today. So we, speaking of that, the website I think is very nicely done. There's still some bugs we're trying to fix, but it's 100% marked improvement of what we had. It's laid out a lot better, and looking forward to folks using it even more. We do have a community engagement coordinator, Mr. Jose Rivera. He's engaged in the community someplace. I do provide monthly city manager updates, and just as an FYI, none of my counterparts in Bastrop, Elgin, or LaGrange do so. If you would like to be on that distribution list where you get an email from me, please sign up afterward or get me your email address. Right now it goes to 242 people. The city manager monthly reports are also available online. So it's a good resource to find out what's going on in the city. We do have the electronic sign at the rec center and the digital billboard on Highway 71. And the deal that we made with Media Choice for that billboard, we do get free flips for the city. So at least one always says, welcome to Smithville. If there's an event going on, they will put it on that sign, both directions for us. Case in point, the fly-in or the volunteer fire department, fundraiser, and or jamboree. We'll always try to put that marketing out for what's going on in our community. In addition to that, the deal that we made, any business owner in Smithville that would like to purchase a flip on the sign gets at least a $200 discount, depending upon do you want it both sides, how many times do you want it to show. So that was something we negotiated for the benefit of those business owners and merchants in Smithville. The City Council Message Board is another tool, workshops and public forums. We do have reverse 911 capability, which we used about 4 years back when we had a chlorine tanker derailment on Highway 95. So very efficient use and way to notify folks. Utility bills, and of course, C-Click Fix. Any questions about citizen engagement or communication? Anything else you'd like to see for citizen engagement or communication, Council? Hearing none, I'll move on. Let's talk about a couple of recent accomplishments, and pictures worth 1,000 words. So we were able to restripe, repaint, and purchase new basketball goals on 5 courts at MLK Park. As you all had an opportunity to see the paint job and the new rims, there's people, kids on it all the time now. I think it was a wonderful addition. We were able to do that with tax note funding. And going forward, we could possibly, there's space. There used to be the old tennis courts for those who've been around here more than a minute. There's space for possibly a pickleball court. So something to come in the future. First Street sidewalks, that project was a TxDOT project, TA set aside. That is complete. Hope you've had a chance to see them finished. And now they're working on the Main Street ADA ramps. That project will be another 3 to 4 months. Something I've been trying to do for 20 years is when you pass by Riverbend Park, you don't know it's a park when you're going 70 miles an hour. This particular sign was made possible by a grant from LCRA, a Community Development Partnership Program grant. It was a $25,000 grant, and we now have a sign at Riverbend Park. Have you all seen the sign? Looks good, yes? If you have an RV that extends more than 15 feet 3 inches with an air conditioner, you will lose the air conditioner. So just, well, if you go under the bridge, it's 10 foot 3 inches and you won't even make it. Yeah. So, yeah. But that was a great project. Another one we just did was every year LCRA Steps Forward project. I think we're 8 years partnering with them on that. And their 25 volunteers came out in April and repainted all the ornamental street lamps on Main Street in downtown, 53 lamps. They look pretty good. Okay. Questions? Future plans and projects. We've already gone over some of the accomplishments, and this is an eye chart. You can't see it in the back, so I'm going to take this a little closer look. All right. We just finished the fly-in. There were 70 aircraft that came and 800 plus people in the, I guess, 6 hours that the air show was on. So very good turnout. It's something the kids always enjoy. If you haven't been to one, I encourage you to do so, as that is one of our, like the river, like our community itself, it's an asset that separates Smithville from the rest of the cities in the county. We recently purchased a fuel concession. We own the gas station now that pilots come and fill up, and we've had a 4x increase in revenue. People are flying out of the way because our gas is $1 cheaper than anyone else. It's the Walmart model. You know, sell it cheaper, sell more, and it's working. Once they get here, we have 3 courtesy vehicles that they can use to come in and have the $100 burger, $150 burger, because it just costs you $150 to fly here. So, but the pilots we've gotten a lot of good reviews of our little airport, and there are plans to further develop our airstrip and replace lighting. We'll talk about after a while. We already know about the solid waste survey. I'm not sure if I communicated in public that we hired a new code compliance officer, which has been very helpful in trying to address the unwholesome conditions throughout town. Comp plan process has been initiated. I've already talked about the sidewalks and the website. The Northeast Second Drainage Project officially started with mobilization ordering in May, but the first date of construction will be June 1st. It's going to begin at Ramona and head back toward Main Street. It's one of the longer segments of the project. They will only close one half of the street at a time. It should take about 4 months, and they'll work their way toward Gresham toward the east. So really looking forward to that drainage project. It's been decades of issues that will help alleviate flooding going forward. PHI Air Medical Transport Contract Agreement. I don't know if folks in the audience remember that the council approved a $13,000 contract to allow free air transport to anyone who actually resides in the city of Smithville. It's anyone in your household. You're covered. If you would like the buy-up plan, I have some cards up front that you can pay $30 and get a national plan whereby you'll be reimbursed for any medical air transport that you go on. Has anyone got that plan now? One, okay. Yeah. So if you haven't flown in a helicopter during emergency, it's $45,000 to $50,000. So it's a good benefit the council approved. We finished the citywide street assessment 2 months ago. That information was done by Freeland Turk. They do a very good model every 10 foot. They identify and prioritize streets with which we in turn will prioritize paving. And a schedule was just published in the last city manager report as to the streets that we're going to repair and pave. That, of course, is a function of the weather and money. A lot of the money this year is being taken by paving the cemetery, Oak Hill Cemetery, a third of that. Basically, each 300 feet or block cost $8,500 to do in chip seal. If you do hot mix, which is the step up, the very smooth black top looking roadway, that's 12 to 14,000 every 300 feet, correct? And for paving, you realize that we are at the mercy of the Bastrop County equipment, because they're the ones that own the paving equipment. So we have to negotiate their schedules to actually finish our paving. So summer's paving season, and we're going to start here pretty quick in June. All right. Last thing two things I want to talk about for recent accomplishments. We just initiated citywide mosquito spraying, and I know there's some folks that do not want mosquito spray on their block or their house. We've already identified those people. If you don't want it, let us know. Otherwise, pretty much 95% of the community wants us to do so, especially at graduation when at the school, because they'll haul off your graduate. They're big out there in school. We also completed a 50% design review of the Smithville Workforce Training Center. We hope to start construction on that within the next 6 months. So that's the recent stuff. That's in the last 3 months of things that have happened. What are we going to do the next 6 months? I'd like to publish the boards and commissions policy. It's in its final draft and review now. It should be ready for review and approval of the June meeting. We want to complete our city hall upgrades. That's the door, the security door here on this side of the hallway. It's lobby glass and a panic button, no cameras. We want to expand, or actually currently expanding the city warehouse facility, adding offices and a conference room space for Edwards guys and himself. We started the comprehensive plan process. We want to complete the wastewater treatment facility expansion study, which they're about 90% done and are prepared to present in July, the results of that study. So that can either be done at a workshop or during the council meeting. We want to implement the WaterSmart interface. This is what Mueller.net used to do for us. We still have one bug where it shows the entire bill versus just your water. We're trying to get that fixed, but if that's the interface that will alert you, the citizens, of a leak, you can set parameters and criteria to notify you if you've reached a certain dollar amount. It gives you water saving tips. So it's a good format and tool that will be available hopefully within a month. Update the city personnel manual, the subdivision and short-term rental ordinance. We want to complete the repairs to the elevated water towers and ground storage tanks. We have 1.6 million gallons of storage capacity. We did take a C of O out in 2019, a $3 million C of O to repair those tanks. And we're still working on the 600,000 gallon tank that was built in 1956 at the main water plant off of Fawcett. I always thought that was neat. You have a water plant on Fawcett Street. Okay, moving on. Tough crowd, like I said. Thank you. All right, you're coming around. You got you. We are going to try to apply something that just came about 3 weeks ago. Texas Department of Emergency Management, a TDEM Grid Resiliency Grant. We're going to solicit RFPs and RFQs. In fact, we've already done that. We'll have a bid opening prior to the council meeting in June. What this will do, if they choose our project, it's to bury all the power lines downtown, get them underground. There are a couple of developers that have been hesitant to go through with their project because of all the lines in the alley behind Honey's and Mosaic and, but it's about a 1.5 to $2 million bill. The requirement is a 50% match that you have to commit to pay if you're selected. The selection, as you know, Kathy, the selection process for any grant takes a long time, and we have the ability to say no. But that will be coming up on June's council meeting. And if we can get that done, then I think one of the developers will pull the trigger on 3 of the projects he's been holding off on. Okay. All right. Talked about paving. We want to formalize our economic development strategy initiatives. We're going to install a playscape at Riverbend Park. In fact, installation is probably currently underway. Next week, yes. That was also in the monthly report. That's about a $90,000, $95,000 hunk of playground equipment or playscape that we got half price because of a grant. So good job, folks. We want to begin construction of the new concession stand at Dennis Walker Fields. You know, the old stand, there was a fire. There is money that's been set aside to do that within the tax note. There's other sponsors I understand within the community that want to donate money to see this happen. And we'd like to get that started in the next 6 months. Okay. We've initiated the FY 24-25 budget process. And then you'll have to adopt the tax rate within the next 6 months. That's the 6-month plan. I won't spend so much time on the longer term plan, but we're going to have to adopt the comp plan, continue our drainage improvements. We do have an airport lighting system upgrade that's in the works. Would love to have the Willows wastewater treatment facility expanded by then, but typically it's probably going to be 3 to 5 years out for planning, design, RFP, all the things you have to go through once you decide what you need, right? We do have $13 million of drainage projects that will have to be implemented. Same thing applies there. The bid process, who you're going to hire for the design, well, actually, BEFCO is doing the design for many of these projects, but the general contractor to build them has yet to be determined. And this is also a project that Langford is managing for us from the grant management perspective. That was action that was taken about 2 years ago from the council. The Northwest Second Drainage Project will be done in 1 year. So next July, God willing, the creek don't rise, drainage issues on Second and downtown will be addressed. You look at ESD and that's Emergency Service District and or Economic Development Corporation creation, and then other things that's listed. Any questions about the future 1 to 3 years? And all of these are subject, you know, to modification. That's why we're having the meetings and always ask the council, what else would you like to see long term? And the citizens indeed can express their opinions through you or to us during any of these workshops. Okay. Questions? Let's talk about the budget. We did the current budget status, what's going on right now, a snapshot as we look at the budget in the year of our Lord, May 22nd, 2024. We did receive a clean financial audit. Those of you who are at the council meeting last week, Jack Clark came and there were no material findings. Overall, our net position increased $168,000. It's good to get a clean audit. That means you're doing things right. I want to thank Cynthia and my staff for always doing the right thing. So appreciate you. Our revenues are currently exceeding expenditures by $379,000 on a $15.8 million budget. We do have 3X operating monies in our general fund balance. That's required by GASB 54. By law, you have to have 3X, and we do. We actually have more than that, but that will dwindle as we get past, as we progress through the year, and typically it ends up being, you know, 150 to 200 by the time we get to the new budget year. Hot tax. Got y'all now, didn't you? Y'all woke up.
Let's just take a pause a minute. Ooh. Ah. Hot tax and sales tax revenues are stable. I have a chart for each of those. We can talk more in detail. To date, since the tax note was approved and taken out last year, the 2003, the series 2023 tax note, the $3 million note, 37% of those funds have been spent, and we've earned $74,000 in interest off of that. And as I said, we're currently in the budget process now. We've completed 67% of the fiscal year, or 8 months out of 12. Here's a look. This is a lot of stuff on one chart, but bottom line is our sales tax in the past 4 years have increased 25%. If you go back 5 years, it's 37%. So I know there's concern amongst some folks that we're not, bringing in the sales tax that we need to. It will come. It does stabilize, but all in all, the trend is upward to the right. How does that compare overall within the county? All municipalities are suffering right now. Last year at this time, it was 10s and 11s. Here's in comparison what is happening in Bastrop, Elgin, and the county as a whole. Now, of course, this is just a percent change, not the dollar value. Our dollar values are significantly less than Bastrop, Elgin, and the county, with our last receipts being $86,861. And this is sales tax revenue or receipts that happened 2 months prior. So the numbers today, the purchases were from 2 months ago. Okay. Sure.
So those are not inflation adjusted, so inflation.
Hold on. You have to get closer. They
Are those percentage at 25% since 2020? That's not inflation adjusted. So we've had about 20% inflation. So how do you compare? I mean, is there a way to isolate new business activity in the sales tax revenue, or is it just pure aggregate sales tax as reported?
Well, I do have, we do have a service that allows us to drill down to see who's paying what tax. That information per the Attorney General can't be shared. So, but I can tell you this, among the top 10 is always Amazon.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but no, I don't think it's been adjusted. I know it hasn't been adjusted for inflation. These are all numbers that come from the state.
And then what, do we know what Flatonia and LaGrange are? Obviously, Elgin and Bastrop are really large cities. I know the percentage is what you're talking about, but do we have those numbers, or do we have a sense for what those look like at Flatonia and Giddings and?
Yeah,
LaGrange?
they're available on the comptroller website. And in fact, in this chart, normally there's I have a link that can take you to the comptroller website. You type in Flatonia and it'll pop out. And you can look at any month, any year.
So is your intuition that those cities like that might be closer to our 1.3? Because they're a little bit more outlying than Elgin and Bastrop. Elgin and Bastrop are closer into the growth right now, so I would expect their numbers to be bigger than ours just because of where they are, but.
I don't mind doing it. I've got it right here. If that's okay, if you indulge me, that way I don't have to take an action item. I can answer your question right now. Open sales tax, browse, budget. May, down, comptroller. Okay, so they're at point, I don't know if you can see that.
Is that 0.9?
It's 0.96. So they're stable from what they did last year. They brought in 40,000 this period compared to 38,490.
So that's their 1 year number is 1%.
Oh, that's their, yeah, this time, same time this year compared to,
Last
so
year.
what's the other town?
LaGrange?
Okay, I understand here. Minus 4.8.
Okay. And then what about Giddings would be the last one?
Sure. 5.9. So they're more in alignment with what
Bastrop.
Bastrop.
but we're still swimming above water for now. So, all right, good question. Hotel occupancy tax, last year we brought in 45.5. I had a typo there, but that's a 13.75 increase year over year from 2022. We're forecast at 65,000. Year to date, receipts are 34,000. And I think we're at, 2 quarters, a quarter and a half. Yeah. Yeah. So, this does include the 30 hotel, lodging, and short-term rental establishments that are currently paying hot tax. 6 of those have been added since we engaged with Civic Plus.
So I'm sorry, Robert, we've added 6 since we engaged that.
We found 6, or correct. And they brought in 1,800, but again, they've only paid 1 quarter.
We had anticipated that there would be more than that, if I recall.
Well, yeah, it was
correct?
43. The person, I think they geofenced our ETJ, not our actual city limit. Yeah.
So that 65, is that just a budgeted number? Is that what we budgeted for?
Yes.
Not some sort of based on what we're actually seeing? And this may not be the right time, and I don't want to catch you off guard. I know we're going to be talking about short-term rental. There is at least 2 years, maybe more, of people that did not pay. And during that time, there were people that were paying. And so I know we've had a few offline conversations philosophically, but is your view still the same that I would like to see the city very aggressively go back at least 2 years? Otherwise, it's not fair for those people that have
Correct.
been paying during the 2 years, and it represents a significant, I think, potentially a significant amount of money.
So to that point, we are still engaging with them to pull that off. Correct? Yeah. But we probably need to turn up the gain. Okay? Especially since we're paying now. Okay, good question. Okay, moving on to the next topic. Let's talk about the enterprise resource planning system module. So just some background. The city of Smithville has had an ERP for at least 15 years, if not longer. We've gone through two conversions, and there's some things we've been working on for the past 12 to 18 months to try to benchmark, validate, and identify a system that's worthy of our purchase. Basically, the current provider, which is STW OpenGov, our contract with them expires. Time's up. Mayor, I respect the request additional time. Do I hear a motion in a second? The contract is over in September. This was going to be extending the contract will be required and was going to be part of the FY 24-25 budget ask. That's still going to have to happen regardless of whether you choose a different ERP provider or not. But basically the big whammy here is that the current provider is going to phase out the payroll functionality of the system, which would require us to outsource that function. In addition, they are converting from non-cloud-based to cloud-based, and the new contract with STW OpenGov would be $49,000. We're going to talk numbers in greater detail in a minute, but basically this ERP allows us to do utility billing. Oh, that's difficult. Utility, Jose, I love you, but it's kind of neat, but not. Okay, good. I'm okay then. Utility billing, payroll, budgeting. There's human resource functionality, financial management, accounts payable, time cards, and attendance. Right now, we don't have a time card system. There are things that this particular vendor called Encode can provide us that we're going to consider and discuss tonight. But the big one is we got to have a payroll system. We can't outsource that function. Jessica Cleghorn right here and Cynthia and about a dozen members of my staff have been researching this for quite some time. Jessica was the project manager for this this initiative, and she'll be speaking to you all or answering any questions that I don't answer later on in the presentation. But we did vet multiple vendors and multiple municipalities as to what they had, what they preferred, what they liked, what they didn't like, what the cost was, so forth and so on. And we came up with the preferred vendor as being Encode. But before I do that, the other ERP companies we researched were FundView and Edmunds GovTech, in addition, of course, to STW and OpenGov. An interesting fact, I was at a cultural district meeting and I wanted to know how many cities were there in Texas. This is beside the point to this conversation, but the city of Smithville, there are only 52 cultural districts in the city of Smithville. I'm sorry, in the state, out of 1,225. So that's the top 4%, and we have one here in Smithville. Yay. Coming back to this presentation, sorry for that digression. 575 out of the 1,225 municipalities in Texas utilize Encode. The surrounding cities that use Encode are Bastrop, Elgin, LaGrange, Giddings, and Flatonia. Jessica did research and call 14 of other municipalities of similar size to get their feedback, and that's contained in the packet that you have in front of you. Bottom line, if we do make a change, Encode is the one to go with. Let's talk a bit about cost. The 1-year extension that we would have to sign is going to be $29,000. STW OpenGov does not plan to obsolete the payroll until sometime mid to the latter part of next calendar year. So we have some time. Tyler Technology is also Encode. They have a one-time fee that includes the license of $198,000. Thereafter, it's $66,000 for the license fee. Their modules, as I've said, are expandable to include additional HR modules, possibly benefits, code enforcement, and other options. But right now, we're just going with this system to meet our current and short-term needs. So what we're looking at in that, we did take the $3 million tax note, okay? The community feedback and council feedback was, we do not want to spend money on security cameras. It's way too much money. We dropped the $350,000 initially that was going to go to replacement of all city cameras, dropped that by $100K to $250. Still, there was some hesitance amongst the council and the community that they didn't want that. All right, I can live with that, but we still need cameras to cover the recycling center, the workforce training center, MLK Park, Riverbend Park. So we're going to continue with cameras at those facilities. Having said that, instead of putting this $200,000 in the FY 24-25 budget, let's take advantage of the residual or what's left from not buying the cameras and purchase a system we desperately need. So the request is going to be that you approve the reallocation of that funding from the cameras to allow the purchase of ERP system. In your packets, you do have a copy of the quote. We are not married to sign the quote today. The quote is good for until June 30th. And there's still some honing we want to do. Maybe there's another module we do or don't want, but right now it's $200,000 and we're going to go with what you see here. Let's take a look at the tax note before we go much further. Definitely an eye chart. A lot's happened on this. As I said, 37% of the $3 million has been spent. Primarily the capital equipment and or paying for grants. 50% in the police department, 50% in public works, and the general stuff is less at 30. And you can't see it, but here's so that used to be, if I can get over there, 250,000. I took the 200,000 out of that and put it down in the city ERP system for your consideration. But that still gives us enough money to cover the cameras in those needed facilities. If we had had a camera, we could have caught the arsonist at Dennis Walker Fields. You know, so I still think that's important. We consider that. But again, there's no immediate plans to pull that trigger until the concession stand is built. So it's okay to sit on this. And the very nature of the tax note will allow you to move monies around as long as it meets the general category of capital equipment, infrastructure improvement, or facility upgrades, which all of these listed do. Okay? Questions? Okay. Citizen comments.
I got one question. So you characterize this as a critical need, this new system. So when did we find out that they were going to discontinue and that this was going to become a critical need? Did they make this decision fairly recently, or have we kind of known this was coming?
We've known it,
Okay.
but we also wanted to research and validate, verify, and vet before bringing it to the council. It was always going to be a part of the next year's budget, but this opportunity, and that's how we work here. There's an opportunity comes, it's my duty to bring that to you for consideration. And if we can pay for this now, that's a lot better than putting in next year's budget, because there ain't a lot of dollars for
So
next year's budget.
So we have 3 years on the tax note dollars?
Yes,
Okay, so
And
we
you
have
have-
3 years to spend them.
correct.
Okay.
And the proposal is, which basically just on a bumper sticker, 198, that gets you the system and a 1-year contract, but you have to commit to 3 years. And quite frankly, once you make a change like this, you don't want to change again. And this is the premier system in Texas. So, having said that, go ahead, questions?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment. Having really no information on this, I did go to Jessica and Cynthia and spent a good deal of time speaking with them. I was impressed by they feel it's the best bundled package, and because it can include the payroll. And it's customer friendly. I think people need to know that if I'm understanding what they're saying, the system will allow residential customers to pay online and review your monthly utility consumption at some point. It's customer-friendly portal, and it can keep up with our growth. We're a small town, and, you know, there may be concern that we don't need such a robust system, but we are growing, and it will enable us to keep up with that. Training is included as well, from what I understand. And I had the opportunity this morning in Bastrop to personally speak with Edie McElwain, who's the finance director for the city of Bastrop. She was a great one to talk to because she's only been on the job 5 months. So she had to have her learning curve, and she found it to be user-friendly and flexible, and the customer service is really good. So I commend our finance department. Not only did they contact many of these customers, but also cities of our size as well for comparison. So I think there's been a really good job done on the research of this particular system, and the fact that there are users out there who really are the ones that you should speak to, because they're the ones that use it on a daily basis. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thanks.
I concur with everything Kathy said, but the one thing I wanted to add is we still do paper timesheets here. And last week, Edward was off, and he had to, it would have been an easier time for Edward to approve them on the computer instead of having them hand delivered to him having to take his time to go through them. So I think it's important for people to understand that it would be a computerized timesheet, which would make things go a lot quicker and easier for our employees. And I concur with everything that you said. I also visited with the finance department. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for, again, good job, Jessica and team, for pulling this data together. And that's another reason for these meetings. I know there were some folks, well, we just heard about it. Well, that's why we're here. We're talking about an opportunity that we've been working on. It was vetted and now ready for presentation and council consideration. So
I would like to add one thing. I did talk to Cynthia and Jessica, and pretty impressive knowledge about everything that they're doing with it. It is, to me, it's the best system from everyone that they described and everything, and the most user-friendly. And the support, from what I understand from other cities that I've talked to, say the support is just excellent. So I think it's a good program for us.
Council, any other questions or comments?
We could go to citizens' comments if you want, and we could come back to council comments. That's fine. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, I have somebody signed up to speak, but I would also like to say the implementation time is going to be,
Closer.
the implementation time is going to be extensive. So holding off, if we start now, we won't even be implemented until 2025 probably. So
Yeah, it is a big undertaking and you don't want your other system to drop out from under you while you're making the decision to purchase a new one or keep the same vendor, which is going to end up being the same, if not more cost, and not have payroll. So in comparison, STW OpenGov was 49,000 for the annual, for their upgrade migrating from non-cloud to cloud, which is happening as we speak. And then you drop out payroll. Okay, so for that annual in comparison renewal, 49,000 versus Encode 66 with payroll, kind of makes sense.
Yes, that was a very good point to make, that it doesn't happen overnight. There is a time frame for it to be uploaded and to become a working system for the employees here. So that's a good note to have.
Thank you.
Employee, I'm sorry. Citizen comments?
I have Les Troy.
Right there. That. Yes.
And just push the button.
Robert, while Les is coming up, just confirm that the quote is good for how long?
Does that work? Am I on? Okay, ladies and gentlemen and citizens of Smithville, my name's Les Troy. I live at 300 4th Avenue here in Smithville. And my reason for being here today is to give you my perspective on the proposed purchase of the enterprise resource software. I've read the 39 reasons that somebody wrote about why it may not be a good idea to buy it now. They look valid to me. But I have a somewhat different perspective on this and other factors. I have worked in a lot of large organizations, small and medium-sized companies, and had my own companies. And Smithville, to me, looks like a relatively small enterprise by comparison to a lot of that. And it just looks like that software is really expensive. It looks like it could add complexity to me. Now, of course, I haven't looked at it in detail, but having run a lot of enterprises like this, it seems like a fairly complicated piece of software. The other thing I've noticed is that the software keeps coming down on price. And again, it seems very expensive to me. I used to buy software for solid modeling. It's obviously very different. It would cost over $100,000, and you can buy it now for $5,000. So, and it's because of the way, computing power has doubled every 2 years for the last 15 years. And so it just seems to me that this is a very expensive system for what we need. So I haven't really seen any summary of what problems we're really having with our current system. I mean, I understand the idea that the payroll system is separate or not included, but again, payroll systems, from my experience, are pretty cheap. So I just think we shouldn't jump the gun and buy this thing right now. And I would really like to see more details on what problems the new software is solving. So thanks for your attention.
Next, I have Carol Jackson.
Thank you. Couldn't get my mic on, sorry.
Hi, I'm Carol Jackson at 300 4th Avenue. I just have a couple points. I talked to Sonia, the city manager in Flatonia, for a long time. She has implemented this software in 2 cities she's been affiliated with. She was finance director for some time at another city, so she has a lot of experience. And her suggestion to me was stick with Encode 9, not go to the new one, Encode 10. I did talk to Cynthia and she said that probably we're going with Encode 10 because she didn't know if Encode 9 was even available. When I was talking to Sonia, of course, she didn't know that fact, but she did say, and 200,000, yes, seems excessive and everything's negotiable. You get in there and you negotiate for as good a product as you can get for as cheap as you can get. So I think that you guys should talk to Sonia. She seems to have a lot of experience. There may be a Encode 9 floating around. Another advantage she thought, and I agree, Encode 9 is not cloud-based. For her, that was a big advantage because being in the cloud, you can be more easily hacked. So there's that. And then a second point, I might be an outlier in this, but from everything I see, our economy is in a very precarious position. I think we're in for a very much of an economic downturn. I think inflation is crazy high and it's only going to get higher. And so if I were making decisions on what to spend, I would think, be as frugal as you can, wait out. Let's see what happens this year. I did not know that we could wait that you had actually budgeted this for next year. I would wait and just see. I mean, if things, I would just in the back of my mind be thinking things are going to get bad. Things are going to get bad. How can we position ourselves to ride out the storm? So that's all I want to say. Be thinking pessimistically.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to bring your attention to the screen. That question was asked of Encode. They do not support version 9 anymore. 10 is the only option. One thing I'd also like to say, this ERP system, currently we have credit card fees. Anyone paid with a credit card, it costs you $4. And those fees are really not a pass-through in that the agencies end up charging the city of Smithville much more. In fact, we're at about a 20 to 24,000 deficit that we have to eat because we don't want to charge our customers the $5.25 or $5.50 it actually costs for a credit card transaction. Going to this ERP system will remove us from the middle. And so the Encode will work with the credit card companies and there'll be no more fee. Or there'll be a fee, but we won't be paying it like we're doing now, correct? So it takes the middleman out. That's another advantage that I forgot to share with you. Jessica, have I missed anything else?
And Mayor, can I make a comment? And this will be a little bit editorializing. It'll go back to budget process that we went through last year when we made some pretty significant raises for salaries across the board. We also committed a lot of dollars to equipment, tax note. As everyone here will certainly remember, there was a fair amount of interest in the community about the increase in fees, the increase in utility transfer or distribution fees, a little bit of torches and pitchforks, to use that phrase. I've certainly heard it. And when I supported that budget last year, I made it clear that while it wasn't a formal quid pro quo, I really expected that we would base the next year's budget heavily on revenue and trying to generate a revenue number and then solve our expenses underneath that. So that's a long way of asking you, Robert, a question. I think that Encode is obviously a preeminent provider in this space. I don't think that's a question. And I think the research that the staff did was thorough and good. A lot of the citizens also reached out. It's obviously scalable. I think cloud-based, even though it has its drawbacks, it's certainly the way of the future. We're going to be a city for a long time, even though we may be a small city for a while. We're going to always be a city, and we're going to always need the types of activities that this software provides. This is my question, Robert, if we had to cut 10% of our spend, regardless of what that's for, police officers, salaries, community grants, whatever that is, and you had to prioritize to a 90% projected budget, would this still be one of those priorities in that 90%?
It would.
Okay, thank you.
And again, let me reiterate that putting this on the tax note takes it out of the budget. I mean, you'll see in the next chart that I'm only requesting our preliminary number is a 5% increase year over year. That's $700,000. You take out 200,000 of that, you have 500,000. Streets are 300. We're going to get to that in a moment. So yes,
No,
I was still saying that.
and I get it. I understand what we're doing is we're moving things around, but I think it is important. I'm not quite maybe as pessimistic as Ms. Jackson is, but I do think that the economy might get a little bit worse before it gets better. I do think that we have to really be focused on the revenue side, and I think we have to, I hope we'll embrace a priority budget philosophy this time, where we don't just assume that just what we've spent money on last year is that are going to be our starting point, and then we're just going to go, okay, well, inflation's 5%, so we should spend 5% more than we did last year. We should, I think, have no sacred cows, and I think we should look really honestly about what's the revenue number that we think we can bring in, which is why I think going back and picking up hot tax dollars from people that may not have been paying is really important. We need to find every dollar that we're legitimately entitled to, and then we need to prioritize our expenses. And there may be some things in my mind that we have spent money on in the past that maybe we shouldn't spend money on this time. And it doesn't mean they're not worthy. It just means they don't make the, the priority stack ranking. But I'm glad to hear you say this. My gut tells me this is the right thing to do, even though just because we have the money approved and we haven't spent it, it's still money that we don't have to spend. And we could sit there on the tax note for another couple of years because something else may pop up that qualifies that you might think is more important.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may. So in general, this is to improve efficiency. Is it going to be able to allow us to, does it affect our staffing levels to the point that we can create efficiencies so that we may be able to evaluate staffing needs that this is going to replace?
Funny you should say that. I'm actually, we have some staffing shortfalls that we need to address. So no, this is not going to replace any member of my staff. Just not.
Too much dead space here. I have to say something. What's the alternative if we don't do this? I know we've got something going away, and we have some period of time, but it's going away. So we have to have a system. The question is, what kind of system, but we have to do something, right?
Correct. What you would have to do is if you keep what we have right now,
Yeah.
STW OpenGov, it's $49,000. They're going through a conversion. Then you'll have to outsource the payroll function. Now, it's just not as simple as, okay, you have QuickBooks and payroll. The payroll function integrates with the budget, the financials.
Yeah, but would you go to like a PEO or somebody like that to do that if you had to outsource that? That's what you would probably do, right, Cynthia? You'd go to a,
If you stay with OpenGov, I mean, at some point, we're going to have to do a conversion through them. So there's conversion costs to them. They will outsource, and they have payrolls, companies that they work with, ADP,
yeah.
Paylocity. They had another one, was their options that they work with. So we would have to pick one of those.
Right. There's some great
So no matter
PEOs out
what we do, we're going to have to eventually.
and they have a cost. I mean, I know because I've used PEOs before, and there's some good ones out there. They're very efficient, and most of them will integrate with your software, but they come at a cost.
Right.
And so if you've got the 44 and you've got whatever that incremental cost is for payroll, I mean, you got to at least spend that because we have to do the functions. So, is 198 too expensive? I mean, I don't know.
Because we
That includes the 66,000
I understand.
annual fee,
Yeah, I
so it's
understand.
125.
Yeah.
120 something.
Right. But you would be, if you spent the 198, you wouldn't be spending the 66 plus the PEO cost, right? It would take place of.
Well, guess I'm confused. Because you have the conversion cost, like 198 is the conversion cost, and then every year after that, you're gonna pay the 66,000 as an annual fee to maintain that.
Right. But if we kept what we have,
If you have what we have, we can currently stay on that. Next year's 29,000. At some point, we're gonna have to convert that. The conversion cost is on one of Jessica's sheets.
okay, so it's 29 to stay on. I was
29
confused in the
to
60.
stay on.
Okay.
Until we convert, and then STW at their lowest rate, their conversion rate would be 95 to 100,000 is what we got from them, just to stay on the one we're on. Because at some point, what we're on, they're no longer going to service. We will have to convert.
Yeah. Okay.
So we don't want to get caught
Absolutely. I understand.
not.
I think we're saying the same thing. I had the numbers wrong, but the point is, I think we're going to have to change. The
Yeah,
question
because
is this the right system? Is this the right time?
Yeah.
And there's a fix in between, but we're not going to go away as a city. It's not like in a year or two, we're not going to have these
And
functions.
it takes up to 12 months to
Yeah,
convert.
yeah,
So no
yeah,
matter what
yeah.
we do, at some point, we're going to have to decide.
Would the price go down if we waited a year and did it next year? Has that been
We're without an agreement now. Our annual fee was on a 5-year. When we went with OpenGov, we got a 5-year agreement. So we were locked in with those rates. Now, next year, it's gone up to 29,000, and they usually do like about a 5% increase every year. So our rate would increase every year.
Oh.
I don't foresee a conversion rate going down. I mean,
And it's pretty much the same as Encode. And I can tell you that my staff, 10 people have spent 6 months looking at this thing, and this is the system of choice. If it's gonna be, if you're gonna pay 95 to 190,000 anyway to keep what you have,
and that's no payroll.
and that's no payroll, this is a no-brainer, guys. I'm sorry. I don't need, yeah.
I mean, I hope I'm not,
No.
I'm not disagreeing necessarily. I think the issue is timing for me, not, and that's a debatable one. I mean, you could argue that if you have to do it, you have to do it. And so why do it twice? Why deal with a system as opposed to converting?
If we waited, what is the cost of outsourcing payroll as a separate?
88.
I don't know that.
Take a look at what that would be
It
as a
quite
standalone.
honestly wasn't even a factor because that just doesn't make sense to me to do that, to outsource something when your cost is already going to be about the same. But we can take a look at it if you like what that cost is going to be. You add complexity, you add delay. Do they integrate with what you have? There's a lot of things that it just didn't, I didn't even look at that, think about that was an option. Because it just actually makes no sense.
I think Jessica has looked at it, so let's hear what she has to
Thank you.
say.
I actually didn't research the outsourcing of payroll. I can say that I have experience with ADP. I did actually love them. They're a very good system as far as payroll goes. They do take care of a lot of things depending on, I guess, what budget you go with. But I did not research that side of it because, in my opinion, having a system, because I worked with ADP in a system that integrated, but it doesn't necessarily integrate. It is a massive entry that you have to upgrade into your system, and it allows room for error. In my research, I felt that the systems that we're looking at as a whole, as a city, you would want something that has everything under one umbrella, to where you're not having to have two different systems, where if something goes wrong with this system, Cynthia made a great point earlier, something goes wrong with this one on payroll, and then something goes wrong with the software, you're in a war between the two, pointing fingers. Well, it's on their end. No, it's on their end. So that was kind of a reason as to not researching. I have experience with ADP. I did really like the payroll system. But I felt like as a city, as a whole, you really want something under the same umbrella.
It's more of a comment that for me, it's a timing issue. I would like to know what that number might be if we were to decide to delay this by a few months. I mean, certainly we could ask for an extended period of time to get the quote done. But just for a comparison, I'd like to see that. It's just, we will have expended the entire tax note by the time this is done, and we don't have anything in reserve.
May I ask a question, Mayor? Jessica, you said we don't currently have the number of what it would cost to use ADP to integrate, but any idea ballpark? I mean, is that something we could come up with pretty?
I can definitely do the research on that. I can start on it tomorrow. I think there's 3 or 4 companies that OpenGov does use and recommends, ADP being one of them, which was again the one that I'm familiar with, but I can research all of them and get you numbers.
And is the credit card fees we would no longer be paying, where does that money go? Is that an offset or?
So if I'm not mistaken, and Cynthia knows the number better than I do, the amount is around 20 grand in deficit that the city would no longer have to be paying, like Robert mentioned. That fee is still going to be set up. That fee is still going to be set up. It would just cut us out, and it would be the merchant, like when, say, I go to use my credit card, that fee still comes out, but it goes directly to that merchant. So it's set up on a percentage base, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Say what that rate would be.
Okay.
So,
So like, yeah.
one more thing, I guess I have to go back to what Mitch said. Mitch said that this, I guess I misunderstood. We've only spent, like you said, 37% of the tax note. Is that correct? So spending this 200,000 does not tie up the whole tax note. And I don't believe, and we still haven't made the final decisions on parts of it that are not spent. They're just placeholders. They're not things that we're gonna actually do. So all of that's, if that's what I heard from you is correct.
Well, Robert, if you consider all of the commitments we've made that we couldn't really practically get out of, what percentage of the tax note has been spent? Because we have a lot of equipment that we haven't paid for because it's back ordered, but we've committed and we've probably put deposits down. So we probably have a significant amount of the tax note that's been committed for, even though the money hadn't been spent. So I think you're both right, in my opinion. I mean, technically, we haven't spent a large percentage, but it would be impractical for us to unwind some of the commitments, particularly on equipment that's expensive, that we've already got orders out.
Well, if you just take a look at the general, which is
Yeah, look
the
at
most remaining funds that we have is in the other stuff that's not public works or police.
Right.
Right? So their commitments, there are no contracts releasing with the exception of the patrol vehicles that David has listed up there on the top. Everything else, we're still looking for a sewer. By the way, the ones in blue, I know it's very tough to see. I apologize. Haven't been spent yet. This is hard to work. Anyway, let's go down to the bottom there. So there's over $1 million of things we haven't spent money on in what I consider the general. The airport lighting system, committed. Security camera upgrade, that, and quite frankly, if you don't want to have, I think we should. If you still don't want cameras, that's the beauty of the tax note. You can move this where you need it. Or you can spend it now, or you can spend it within 3.5 years. The fire department tanker, they have no contracts. It's just money sitting there. And that's good because you can draw interest on it. So to answer your point, there are no commitments other than the grant matches in this line item that absolutely have to be paid at this point. It's all at your discretion.
What's our payroll? Is our payroll annually 3.5, maybe 3.6? annual, 3536, be my guess. I think that's right. So a PEO would be anywhere from 3 to 10%, I think, annual. So I know like Insperity and ADP. So I mean, if it was just 3% of $3.5 million is 35, is 100 grand? Is that more? Maybe it's more. I should know as a banker, huh? 3.5% would be 120 something thousand bucks. So I'm not sure that's the right, so don't quote me. I'm just saying as a percentage, I know it ranges anywhere from 2 or 3% to more depending on the size payroll. So anyway, I think it's not an insignificant amount of money. Now, my question would be with this software, if we did this, we don't have those sorts of costs. We're doing that by using our software and using our own human resources to process it, right? Yeah. So is it a pure savings over a PEO?
So of the $3 million tax note, what have we committed to spend?
If you look up there, I know it's, you have it in your binder?
Right
Yeah,
here.
okay, so we've committed, there's a total, there's an actual, and what remains. So the commitment, you've committed to spending $3 million on this stuff. That doesn't mean this stuff can't change because it meets with the criteria of the tax note. Is it capital? Is it infrastructure improvement? Is it facility upgrades? So the only thing that you have to pay for are deals for cars or capital equipment or grants. That's what has been committed. The other is you can decide that you don't want to or move it around, which is what we're doing. The recommendation is tonight regarding not doing the 250,000 security cameras and moving that to ERP.
So
You can,
technically, we got $1 million.
you got $1.6 million there in the general that you could play with. Well, I can't say that. No, I apologize. Because if you look at the grant matches, that you have to take out 165 because that's committed. Hadn't been spent. It's still sitting in there drawing interest. But that particular line item, grant matches we have to have for drainage and the sidewalk and ramp project. It's in blue.
Yeah, I see it. There's-
Sorry.
So back to the credit card fees, are we, that's a potential $20,000 a year in savings?
Yes.
Those are the numbers I like to hear because it helps me.
Yeah, and if we go with this and the payroll drops out, if we just settle $100,000 a year that's costing in payroll, it makes no
Yeah, that, I mean,
sense
that,
to not.
I'm just asking a question. I don't think it makes sense. I'd like to know the numbers. I mean, the timing for me, I was hoping we would be further along in the budget process and going through a prioritization of where our spending is before we made a commitment to this. That's why, I mean, right now, I'm not inclined tonight to vote in favor of this. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, because we've at least got till June 30th, but I would like to see us go through a prioritization process on the budget in terms of I forgot how many categories we've got, five categories, but
Can I ask you a question, Jessica? So if this council does decide to go with this or wait till June, what is the implementation payment schedule? I mean, we're not going to give them $100 or $200,000 tomorrow.
No, sir.
It's going to be staggered throughout the length of the implementation period, I would think, correct?
Correct. We would have to pay them I don't have it in front of me. We would have to pay them an upfront fee, which is technically our monthly, our annual, our annual fee that we would pay them. We would have to pay that up front. I did talk to him and he said he would work with our budget. He would not require it all at once. He would do a percentage type payment. We would pay this percentage during this time frame and this percentage during the next time frame to work with our budget. The implementation of the around 200 grand, that would go, we would get invoiced on that. We wouldn't get invoiced the entire amount right up front. We would get invoiced as they work on the system, as the system goes live, as we have training. So each module, basically, we would get an invoice on, here's your general ledger. Usually your accounting goes up first. Here's your accounting, your budget, your general ledger, your financial, and then so forth.
So there's an opportunity for us to earn a little bit more interest.
Correct.
So Mayor, you have an opportunity now. I can get through the rest of the presentation and come back to item 4. There may be more citizen comments on the budget. But there is an actionable item on the agenda. So would you prefer me to get through this or do you want to address number 4 now? What would you like?
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 200,000 preliminary into the tax note for the Encode and have it there to spend that money for our software service.
I second that emotion.
Motion's been made and second. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? Motion is approved. Jennifer, did you get that? Okay. Do you want to continue on?
Yes, please. So, again, this is something new. We typically don't even start with the budget until July, August timeframe. So you're getting a look at in advance of what we're thinking. But I also want you to understand the process as to how we get from A to B and the timing of that process. So per request, we have identified 5 budget workshops that we're going to hold between now and the adoption of the budget. Please note that the process will increase in scope and complexity as over time. So won't be a lot of substantive information tonight, but as we get to July and August, it really gets hairy in that my direct reports, we start meeting in July. And what's driving all of the budget is the release of the certified roll, the Bastrop County Appraisal District certified roll. Right now, the preliminary roll has been issued by law. It had to happen before the end of April. But the certified roll is not due until the end of July. The assessed values, the certified roll is what drives our tax rate. The tax rate is what drives the budget. So to do anything really deep down and dirty before July is tough because you'll have to modify that. Case in point, last year, the preliminary values came out in April. And between April and July, there were 11 changes to those rolls, based upon not arbitration, protest. Yeah, thank you. And so those are constantly changing. So once the certified roll happens, then we have something substantive to work with. We'll know what the M&O rate's going to be. We'll know what the maximum taxes we can possibly increase or decrease. We'll know what projects and budgets need to carry over from this year to the next year. We also will be able to prioritize what projects and plans that are important to the staff, the council, and the community. So having said that, the spending detail, the detailed plans, programs, and what we want to ask for happens, we start developing that in July and it's presented at the August council meeting. Now, we'll give you preliminary packets, the yellow sheets. And what I want to go to now, there are 22 cost centers. So the owners of each of those cost centers are responsible for plans and programs and projects. They in turn will speak with their staff to get a benchmark or verify where we are in a particular project this year. And is that project going to be completed? Have all the monies been spent for that project? If not, you got to put it over in next year's bucket. And on top of that, you have to decide what we are going to do. What does the council want us to do? The citizens want? What's the prioritization of plans, projects that need to be added to next year's budget? So all that happens in the July, August timeframe. We do manage by cost center and not by line item. So most of the people here, I think, have been to a budget workshop. Yes, where the staff presents their plans and projects. Show of hands. Okay. It's very detailed. It's about 4.5 hours, but they spend a lot of time prioritizing what they feel as being the people closest to it needs to be done. So having said that, let's take a look at what the proposed, again, typically I've always started in my role here as city manager with a 5% target. That's what, if you do look at 5 years of budget data that Cynthia provides, it's typically between 4 and 5%. Now, there are years where we have anomalies, but this year, if you do the 5% math, you'll go from a $15.8 million budget to a $16.6 million budget. A lot of detail here, but a lot of good information. These are the tax rates, the percent increases and decreases in budget year over year since FY 19-20. Typically, that tax rate has remained stable. Okay, not working. It's kind of neat, but it is cumbersome. And that's been done through a series of taking these tax notes to keep that rate at a constant level. Jack Clark told you that's what you needed to do about 15, 20 years ago. We dropped it 10 cents and we're still paying for that now. It was nice for the citizens, but in reality, just so you know, for every $1 million of property value, that brings $5,489 of money or property taxes, okay? So when you talk about dropping the rate, drop it 10 cents, you go to 44. So you'll lose, that's $1,000 off of your taxes. So our tax rate, property taxes and sales tax really help us fund the general fund, and it's important to keep that rate stable. So those are the numbers. And I'm pretty happy it went down from 19, but let's not kid ourselves. Although you keep it stable, when your appraised value or assessed values go up, you're really increasing taxes.
And that's a great point that I was going to make. That's all that really matters at the end of the day here to people. They pay, think of all the ways citizens give us money, all the ways. Every citizen in this town is an investor in this company. This company is called the City of Smithfield. They're all investors. Just like if you invest in Coca-Cola or GE, you're an investor, you expect to get a return on that investment. And with all due respect to Jack, he's coming at it from the perspective, not Paige, auditor Jack.
Back here?
Although his ghost is in here a lot, I suspect.
Contractor, he can't be in
Yeah.
here. Save money.
With all due respect to him, he's coming at it from the standpoint of looking out for the best interest of the business operations of the city, having as much money to fund all the things. So it goes back to a comment I made earlier about prioritization, and I made to Jack when he presented, there is another option, and that is you can spend less money. The government can do less for people than what it has been. And that's the point I want to make when for me personally, I feel very strongly that I went out on a limb last budget cycle and stood behind what I thought was the right thing to do for the employees of Smithville. They were underpaid for a long time and they needed the raises. And I was all for that. We also needed police equipment. We needed fire equipment. We needed utility equipment. And I went out there and I was proud to support that. But I made it clear that when it came time for it, the citizens did matter. And people asked me during the last campaign if I've learned anything in 5 years here, is this town has a lot lower average income. And I didn't appreciate that as much in the first few years as I do today. And I intend to be very sensitive to that personally when I vote on the budget. And so my contribution tonight is kind of a kind of advanced warning for me is I want to see us be really sensitive to how much citizens have to pay. And if that means possibly looking at ways to roll back some of those fees, or maybe not to decrease the tax rate, but to base our budget on a no new tax, the actual dollars that people would pay without actually changing that. There's nothing wrong with us running a little surplus and putting that money into a rainy day fund. We can build up some money, but let's look hard at finding ways to spend less money. I mean, don't we all do it in our own homes when we don't have the money going as far as we want? So let's don't forget, we can always spend less.
Okay, fair enough.
Mayor, may I ask the city manager a question? Do you see any need for any extra funding in terms of certificates or tax notes?
I really won't know until the certified roll comes out to see how much actual property tax value or revenue is going to come in, and how much the effective tax rate, which I have a chart in a minute, what it's going to do to us. we really don't want to lose 4 to 6 cents on the tax rate. That's why another reason we took the note out last year, because it was going to be a 6 cents drop in taxes. That you not stabilize the rate because of the appraised values went stupid. In fact, it was like 14.58 increase year over year and 20 the prior year. So when the appraised values go up, your effective rate goes down. And the taxes that you would have brought in from the prior year, that dollar value drops your tax rate. And it merely limits you in your M&O portion of your budget. So the monies we took out stabilized the rate and put it in INS. So I can't answer your question yet.
No, I understand the concept of protecting the tax rate and I appreciate you explaining that because that's a concept that we're not the only ones who use that concept about protecting the tax rate. And I look forward to, as we move forward through the process, each of us having the opportunity to define what priorities we want to see the budget, what direction we want to go. I'm a big proponent of expanding economic development. And Robert, I want to get you some help too. So there's some things that we need to agree on that we're going to prioritize. And the earlier we do it, the better as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we could preserve the tax rate, which means more people pay more taxes because valuations are going to be up. But we can find ways to cut other expenses that people pay.
Yeah, again, right now, we're got a blindfolded and throwing at a dartboard you can't see. Until I get the certified roll, and I can give you more definitive answers. But to your point, yeah, we have no problem prioritizing projects, not spending as much. Again, last year was a very interesting year with respect to spending. And
And I mean, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but when I say there's no sacred cows, I think, I worked for companies for many, many years. I only really worked for a couple companies, and I found myself over time, you become somewhat blinded by the forest. You're in it and you just kind of get caught up in the culture. I think it's really worthwhile exercise to look at every asset that the city owns, because every asset, every building, every piece of real estate the city owns is a piece of real estate that everybody in this town owns a small piece of, just like you own a small piece of every Coca-Cola factory. If you're a Coca-Cola investor, you own a share of this city. So we own vacant lots, we own buildings, we own houses, we let nonprofits occupy them rent-free, we pay utilities for nonprofits. And I'm not suggesting that those nonprofits don't provide great service, but when you talk about priority budgeting, you're oftentimes talking about not funding things that you really think are worthwhile, but you're prioritizing citizens' pocketbook over some of those things. That's why I asked the question, if you had to shave off 10%, would this fall was still within the priority? And you said it did, and I suspected you would, because I agree with you. I think it's an important thing that we have to do. But I just want to see us be really more sensitive to what people have to pay, whether it's recycle fees, whether it's transfer fees on utilities,
and
everything.
when you told me to find the money, I warned y'all about that.
Well,
I was only going 5%
but
raise
you
the
can-
fees, raise
but
the utility rate.
We had to find the money, but we can cut costs too.
Yeah.
There,
No doubt. No
There's
one's-
two sides to the ledger. There's things that we all determine we have to do, and that's when prioritization comes in. is we all
agreeing with you.
decide.
I'm just telling you what
Yeah.
happened in the past.
You did it at Applied. You've done this before, so you know exactly how this works.
Yeah. Okay.
So at what point in the process are we going to do this prioritization?
Probably the July, August timeframe. Now, that doesn't mean you can't recommend what you'd like to see. If you have a project or a plan or something in the city, I don't know what it is, or a citizen comes to you as a conduit to them, this is what we want to look at. I'm just trying to think of one, let's revitalize the park at Calberg on the hill. But I don't know if that's it or not, but it's your time to tell us what you want.
So what do you envision? The next workshop is June 12th. So what would be our tasks as you see it right now? And I guess this is the point where we can talk about what we want to do during the next meeting.
It's all also about understanding. That's why I spend so much time on the next 6 months and current accomplishments. What do we have going now? What do we need to get done? And then how much of that is going to carry over into the next year? But in the meantime, in parallel, if you have a project or plan, we can talk about it.
Okay.
So I intend to continue giving these updates as to, hey, oh, by the way, Main Street ADA ramps are complete. So it's just, we just need to communicate. And during the next workshops, you can bring those items that you would like to see to us and we'll
Yeah,
work it in.
I appreciate the process and I appreciate the opportunity, particularly since we have moved up the schedule this year. I greatly appreciate that. For us to identify the priorities that we want to see us focus on, to me, the earlier the better. So maybe at the next meeting, and then when the numbers come in and we say, oh, we can't afford that, then we're going to have to either cut some of those priority projects or we may have to cut budget. I mean, we don't know what we've got.
I think it'll also help, throughout this process, doing this earlier, it's a lot of information at once. It's an education. Oh, I didn't understand that the effective rate was this affected by the appraised values. There are projects that are going to carry over into next year. The $13 million GLO drainage projects. I have 4 projects that are going to be ongoing. Okay. So I want to present that information so you have a better feel of what is definitely going to carry over into the next year. Okay. I think we talked about that. Let's move on. So to your point, the next step is start preparing for June 12th. I will give another budget status where we are. We'll be at 9/12, but the good news is prior to this workshop, you will have met at City Council and have a current update as to where we are in the utility fund, the general fund, the reserves. So I can spend less time on going over the current budget and talk about the future budget. Okay. And Councilmember Meek asked me to let's bring up the short-term rental ordinance and there's other topics. The world is your oyster, basically, especially until we get the July, August timeframe. So we can take the opportunity to meet to discuss any one of these topics going forward. But for the next meeting, that's what I'm proposing we cover. And if you have a list of projects from that your constituents want us to bring forward or yourself, give it to us now. Don't wait till August so we can work it in.
I won't be waiting, I promise.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions?
Until then, stay informed, get involved, and make a difference. Plant a tree, do something positive. Smile. Thank you.
Thank you.